Okay, looks like it's 2 o'clock. That's quite a big turnout. Welcome, everybody, to the Cataloging Working Group online meeting, July 10th, 2018. Like I said, we'll start a little slowly. If anybody's having any trouble connecting or with the audio, please type into the chat box and we'll be monitoring it so we can respond to you. Everybody's microphone is unmuted on our end, so you can mute on your side. And I prefer to keep it that way so you can speak up whenever you want to during the meetings. And that way we don't have to shut everybody down at once. So welcome. My name is Jennifer Weston, and I'm just facilitating the group, which in no way makes me an expert at anything other than just showing up to do these calls. I am from the NC Cardinal Consortium here in North Carolina. And this working group, continuing these conversations throughout the year, something that several of us have been talking about for a couple of years at conferences now. And I want to make sure the microphone's working for the other organizing committee members if we can do that here. I'm just giving you a warning. We'll go down the list for anybody that's on the call. So we've been talking for a couple of months now since the conference on how to keep it together, how we can do this virtually. I'm getting a little feedback. There we go. That's better. So if the others are okay, what you're seeing on my screen now is the agenda for the day. The link to the agenda is there, but we're going to be taking notes on this agenda as we go through the call, so you don't have to go out to the agenda unless you want to. What we're seeing is what we're going to be working on. Mike wrote the others. So I know, Jonathan, are you there? Can you say hello?
Yes. Hi, I'm Jonathan Furr. I'm with the Forsyth County Public Library, also in the NC Cardinal Consortium. And I'll be taking notes on the agenda. I'll be one of the two or three people taking notes on the agenda as we go along today.
And Jane, I see where you're logged into.
Hi, everyone. This is Jane Sandberg. I'm at Lynn Benton Community College in Oregon, and I'm also going to be taking some notes.
Okay, back at the top. Galen, are you here?
Yes, I am. I'm Galen Troughton with the Equinox Open Library Initiative, and I'm here in my capacity as an evergreen developer and a committer to see how I can help facilitate cataloging improvements.
Thank you. Kate, are you with us today?
I am. Hi, everyone. I'm library. I'm excited.
Okay. Well, hi, Kate. I can barely hear you, but I'm glad you're here. And Elaine, are you with us today? I know they're moving there in Pine, so we might not have Elaine this afternoon.
This is Tiffany. Elaine just pinged me and said she's having trouble hearing right now, so she's trying. Oh, there you go. She's trying to figure it out.
Okay. Let me see if there's anything we can do on my side. Okay, I'll keep working with Elaine. Andrea, are you here? And I'll work with Elaine.
Yeah, hi everybody. Andrea Bunsimon from Equinox Open Library Initiative, and I'm here as a former cataloger and current software development project manager at Equinox to, as Galen said, to see what we can do about facilitating cataloging improvements in Evergreen.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's all of us. Let's see.
Hey, this is Kate again. Can you guys hear me?
We can just barely hear you, Kate.
Darn. Okay.
And Elaine, are you tied in with your microphone or your computer? With your phone or your computer? Can hear it. Okay. Jonathan, will you keep working with Elaine's audio in the chat box? Okay, yep. Thanks. So we can keep going. Okay. And I felt like starting with the welcome from us with an old political comment. Does anybody remember Admiral Stockdale and his vice presidential debates of who am I and why am I here? I kind of feel like that, especially as this group gets bigger and bigger. But I'm here because I'm interested in keeping conversations going with cataloging committees, because whether you know it or not, a lot of you, whether I've talked with you or not, have been big mentors of mine through the committee. Because in NC Cardinal, we're a lot of passive participants, I would say. We watch what's going on. We learn from all of you. We steal from your documentation when we train our folks here. And both Jonathan and I have talked for a couple of years about how much we've learned from the committee and how much we want to give back, and how great it would be for people coming in to be able to really draw from the wealth of knowledge that's out there and keep us talking and planning about where we're going as catalogers, not just as developers and how we make it work for us once the development's already done, but how we can have input into that and testing and make our voices louder at the times when it's not critical, but when it's times to be productive and creative. So that's really why I'm here, and one of the reasons that everybody else is here that's agreed to come together to organize these monthly calls. And the purpose of this working group, I think we've decided, is just for that reason, to strengthen this and to enable us to connect and communicate, but advocate and act. That's the other thing. A lot of what we do is just watch and listen, and not so much coming together as a community to start making things happen. And a lot of that is just trying to figure out how we start, and that's what today is all about. So we are going to just kind of go through this agenda of how we imagine meetings will work on a monthly basis, and then get some input from all of you, which is why we're trying to make sure this audio works here. And if it doesn't, sometimes I think we just have to drop the call in and call back in again. So again, we are recording the call for anybody that's not here. Anybody have any questions they want before we start talking about what we think the meetings should be like? I just want to pause because I feel like I'm talking to empty air for a moment. I'll wait just for 30 quiet seconds if anybody wants to ask a question. And I'll check that box again. Okay, that's on there. So first of all, if you want to join us, we are a volunteer initiative. What made us special is we know how to contact one another, and we did. And that's probably the limit of it, and we're willing to put in a little bit of time. So anybody that wants to join us in planning the meetings and planning the kinds of information that are being gathered, the information that's being gathered, and then just sharing then with the rest of the community. So if you're willing or interested in participating in this group in any way, please let us know. We'll be glad to plug you in whatever way you want. So this is not an exclusive group by any means, and we're very glad you're all here today. Talk a little about the purpose of the group. The structure of these meetings, we envision of doing these every month just so we don't lose momentum. Much like DIG and some of the other groups that meet, we have to hold ourselves accountable, and for me that means being accountable to all of you. So we'll do kind of meetly meetings. This today, I think this is more of an informational meeting, and we talked about doing a rotation, that 1 month we'll do informational, we'll just see what's going on with Evergreen, do we have questions, or are there things blocking our path that we really just want to talk about, bugs, new features, and then on the alternating months, have things like the small sessions that we do at the conference, even a lightning round, spend 10 or 15 minutes talking about a new feature or a really cool experience somebody has had, or a frustrating experience that somebody has had. And then after that, have kind of some Q&A. So it's not just about coming together to get a business update. It's about coming together to talk about things that we can learn from one another that maybe we don't all get to the conferences. We're not able to get to a lot of the sessions. Maybe there's interest out there in what you're doing and you want to share. So really the themes are going to be things that we're going to need the most input from the community, the kinds of things you're looking for and might be willing to do some volunteer. Yes. The format is going to be similar to this. We want to be able to plug everybody in. There are a couple of different library systems that have offered their platforms. We're here in NC Cardinal, so we're just taking advantage of ours while we're getting started. But we may be trying out some different formats, even using IRC at times when we are working with developers, because we've talked about highlighting developers from time to time to kind of talk about how we communicate between developers and catalogers. But right now we're trying to do this so that we can just share one screen and take notes together, at least for these first couple of meetings until we build up a little rhythm. But they all will be archived. And if you notice at the very top of the screen there is a link to the wiki, which has been updated. It was actually there before we discovered, so we are just reinvigorating it. It's got a lot of information there already, and all of the agendas for these meetings will be there on the wiki, and all of the archived recordings from these meetings will be on the wiki. So please make sure you check that out. And if you don't have a login for the wiki, I think you can contact Jane or a whole host of other people. But Jane helped me with mine, I can say. Jane, is it okay to tell them to contact you if they don't have a login?
Yeah, that's just fine. And so the login will allow you to edit what's on the wiki, but any of you can just go to the wiki and look at past agendas and past recordings of meetings and so forth. So you're very welcome to do that. It's just if you'd like to help us to edit these pages, just let me know.
Okay. Thank you. That's a good point. Yeah, you don't actually have to be somebody who wants to work with editing anything on the wiki. You can just browse. So what we thought we would do with a typical informational meeting was have some sort of standing agenda items so that we had structure like most project management meetings go. And these were the kinds of things that we wanted to see on our...
I dialed in.
Hi there. Welcome. And I'll say to anybody new joining us, if you want to mute on your side, you can do that because nobody's muted from our side. Amazing. But welcome to anybody new joining us. So right now we were just going to look at these standing agenda items that we would be looking at on the every other month rotation here. We'd want to celebrate, we decided. We had a long list of things we wanted to talk about, and we thought, well, we could probably stop and celebrate from time to time, too, because we all get caught up in what's next and getting through one hurdle and on to the next. And this month, we're not really going to put a lot of content into these agenda items. There will be a few places where we stop. We'd like to keep each of these meetings to less than 1 hour because everybody's time is very precious. And we probably will not go that long today. Again, we're just looking at the kinds of agenda items we want to capture and to get your feedback, either today or through the listserv. So we want to celebrate progress. We want to talk about new bug fixes and new features. And I think this might be the part to where there's a different point later on that says listserv recent discussion threads, because there's some really good stuff that goes on those listservs. But it's also sometimes not complicated, but overwhelming to try to follow on top of everything else we're doing in our daily lives to follow all the listservs. So it'd be nice to pull these discussion threads in and review them together. And those two things, looking at the bug fixes and new features and the listserv recent discussion thread, these are the kinds of things that the organizing committee is going to be working to see what we want to bring into these monthly conversations. And I had an example, if Andrea doesn't mind, that she sent out an excellent email to the listserv last week, to talk about a cataloging bug fix. This is just kind of an example of what we'll talk about in the informational meetings. But if Andrea, if you don't mind speaking to that, to the group.
Sure, yeah. And I, hang on, let me go ahead and drop the link in there to the email in case anybody who's listening is not subscribed to the general list. But that right there is the link to my email. We've, with a couple of generous community sponsorships, Equinox has identified and been working on a list of cataloging bug fixes that several of which are marked as web staff blockers. And we've got a few fixes up now on a public community demo server that we're hosting for people to test and offer comments on, or if they're working great, to sign off on. And our goal is to have, most, if not all of these addressed for 3.2. If we're really fantastically lucky and get these all these on our list addressed before we run out of funds, we will certainly be picking off a couple of others that are out there in cataloging land. And this list was a list that I had put out around the conference and then revised after some input of the in-person cataloging meeting at the conference. So we're pretty excited about that, and really hoping to get some good bug fixes in for 3.2, which is, as most of you probably know, when the Zool client is scheduled to go away. So we're hoping to really improve the workflow and the usability in the cataloging module on the web client. And if there's any questions about any of that or the fixes we're doing, you can feel free to ping me either in IRC or email or whatever. So.
Andrea, I was wondering if you'd be able to give us a brief overview of how people on this call can get involved and try out that cataloging bug fix.
Oh yeah, well, the email that I sent has a link to a public spreadsheet, and that's got server credentials on the spreadsheet, test server credentials, and there's a list of the bugs that we're working on, and the ones that have been put on that test server are noted, and so you can follow the link to the bug and go read the bug report, see what was the problem was, see what we were trying to fix, and go step through your workflow related to that bug on the test server, and then respond in Launchpad with your comments. So Launchpad is the public bug tracking site that Evergreen uses, the whole Evergreen community. And so if you don't have an account, you can create an account. It's free. Let us know the results of your testing, and if it works for you or if it doesn't work for you. And that's a good way for people who are non-developers but really familiar with cataloging workflows. That's something that can be very helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And this is exactly the kind of thing that gets me excited when I see that there's something that I can help test with, and that there's stuff out there telling me how I can do it. You've already done all the work and put it together, and all I have to do is just test it and see if it works.
Yep, and we're putting them directly on our own test server, so you don't even have to spin up your own testing environment. Although if you have the capability to do that, you're certainly welcome to pull down master and attach the fix to your own testing environment. But for people that you don't have the time or the inclination to do that, that's why we created a public testing environment to facilitate that.
And maybe in one of our themed meetings, we can revisit the presentation that you have done and several others I think have done in the past on how to work with Launchpad.
Yeah. Yeah, Mary Jean Gluski and I did a presentation at the conference about submitting bugs to Launchpad, and actually the link to that presentation is on the conference website. So if you go to the Evergreen website under this year's conference, the link to our slides is and has been up there. So anybody can take a look at that if they are unfamiliar with Launchpad and want to read a little bit about it before they get started.
I think we can find that and pull that into the wiki then for the working group. So it'll be right there for everybody.
Yeah, I'll grab that link and pop it in the document.
Anybody else have questions for Andrea before we move on? Okay. Got a couple of other just standing. Okay, Erin wants to know if Andrea can increase her volume. A couple of other standing agenda items that we would be doing in regular meetings. Again, this is just to introduce the way meetings will work. So we'll do Webby updates. Obviously, that's what we're all doing now. We're moving towards, especially the Zool client going out of fashion very quickly. We're all going to be talking about what Webby does for us or what we want it to do for us. So we'll spend a lot of time here, and we're going to rely on the developers in the group to kind of tell us where we are and where we're going and what kind of insight they might want from us and for us to answer questions. So, Galen, if you don't mind, if you can kind of talk about where we are currently, what roadmap we're working on, and where we can find out more about those in between these calls.
Right. For enhancements to Evergreen as opposed to bug fixes, we try to identify the big ones and get them linked from a roadmap page on the wiki. It's linked from the Google Doc, but I've also shared it in the chat. But actually, let me share it to everybody and not just Jennifer. Since the focus for 3.2 will be completing the move to Webby. The bug fixing that Andrea discussed is really going to be the primary focus, at least as far as cataloging is concerned. That said, there are a couple new things coming down the pike that will be of direct benefit to cataloging and item processing workflows. One of them, under the cataloging heading on that roadmap page, is adding a support for inventory date. So a project brokered by the MassLink Evergreen Development Initiative, and which will be implemented by Catalyte. So this won't be a full inventory module, but by adding the ability to keep track of when an item was last inventoried, it will make that part of the workflow easier than many of the workarounds that you all have been using over the years. Now, there's another item on the roadmap that isn't under the cataloging heading that still will hopefully improve your working lives, and that's batch actions from search result, another MassLink project that in this case Equinox is doing the development for, and it's currently in active testing by MassLink. And the thing here is, from search results, both in the public catalog as well as catalog search from the web staff interface, it will grow a set of checkboxes allowing you to select hits from the search result pages. And where this intersects with cataloging is one of the things you'll be able to do in the web staff interface is to add in one fell swoop all the records that you've selected into the basket into a record bucket, which you can then make use of for further batch processing. So in and of itself, not necessarily a huge thing, but something that hopefully will save some time as you do your daily batch processing. And that sort of thing of things that don't amount to hugely ambitious things like implementing bitframe or implementing RDA in a world without section numbering or things like that. The sort of smaller and medium-sized workflow things is the sort of thing where I know that the developers and the development funding pools are very interested in your ideas, in terms of what would make it easier for you to deal with the records. And one of my personal hobby horses is what can we do to take Evergreen's cataloging functionality beyond just a mark editor to adding what you need to manage the entire workflow. So any questions for me at this point before I talk a bit more about Launchpad and monthly releases? Okay, so feel free to ask at any time. But moving on, one of the things I would like to point out is there's a link to the existing cataloging bugs. So this is everything that's been tagged with a tag in Launchpad called cataloging. And by the way, this is something in general where you can help in Launchpad is if a bug needs a tag, well, what do y'all in part spend their time doing? Subject analysis, assigning headings, that sort of thing. So using that Launchpad to going in Launchpad and editing the bugs to improve their findability, is very much a way that you can contribute. In addition, of course, to commenting on the bugs directly. Another link I will pop into chat now, and yes, it's a very long one, is a link to all of the cataloging bugs that are marked high priority. And that's something else that can be useful feedback in Launchpad, is giving an indication of when a bug is a particularly big problem for you, because sometimes it's not always readily apparent that a given issue is a huge deal. Conversely, sometimes something that seems like a huge deal to a developer, maybe you all actually do have reasonable workarounds, and there's actually a better target for our bug fixing efforts. So one of the things that's been long-standing practice in Evergreen is doing monthly releases, and that's something where every month, give or take, bug fixes become available. And that's actually been particularly important in the past year for Evergreen 3.0 and 3.1, because a number of changes, including to cataloging, have become a part of the monthly maintenance releases. And that's something for those of you who directly help to maintain your Evergreen systems, more so than might have been the case a couple years ago. The more that you can advocate to get frequent maintenance upgrades, the better in terms of getting earlier access to cataloging fixes. So the last thing under this heading is kind of a thing that we know that we need to do more of, and that's updating things like internal tag tables as cataloging standards get updated. We're at this point a little overdue for reconciling the internal tag tables with recent Mark 21 tag and subfield updates. But this is also a thing where we would need some guidance from the cataloging community. Things like say for RDA support. Evergreen has supported indexing of the 264 for years at this point. It has also allowed indexing of the 33x fields for a while at this point. But are there additional things that would make RDA mark records more useful? And that's an open question where both potentially via bugs, but also discussion on the cataloging mailing list, where if there are things that Evergreen can be doing to make better concrete use of RDA mark records, we need you to let us know. So this kind of it for the Webby updates section, unless there are questions for me. So I guess at this point I'll hand it back to Jennifer.
Thank you very much, Galen. That's a lot of really good information. As I'm thinking about RDA, I keep thinking, oh, the new RDA hasn't been released. But then again, I think we've all built workarounds for a lot of what we're doing that are probably still going to be in place even after we see new RDA standards in the next year or so. So I think what you said to us about looking for smaller and medium-sized updates, things that would make our life easier, is very important, because I think so often we get stuck in just, well, we can make it work, and then grumbling about it, as opposed to just one little thing might make our lives better. And if we can say that to enough people, and if we figure out it's not really that much that will require changing on from the developer side, but if we can talk about what would make the workflow easier, sometimes that's what gets lost in these conversations when we're looking at the bigger and better things and where do we go beyond a mark editor, when reality I want to be able to do is get from one screen to the next that I can't do right now. So I really like the focus on the smaller and medium, the things that we think are small that we can work into, even if these are just even if you don't make it into a monthly release, but if, a few months from now we can make it into a release, it can make our lives easier. So thank you very much, Galen. I think this is going to be very helpful for all of us to be able to synthesize all of that information that goes out so often on the listserv that can be overwhelming to catalogers, but that's important to us. We have to be able to carve out the things that are going to directly impact us, and I love these links where we can now look at the bugs very quickly that apply to us. So thank you for all of that and for all of you that have helped us with that. I think we kind of talked about the sorts of things we want to do with the recent discussion threads, and I'm glad to see new names on the discussion threads too. That's always exciting to see new people join. And again, if you're not on the listserv, you can join those on the Evergreen ILS website. We'll put a link to that on the wiki too. I feel like most people will get to the listserv before the wiki, but it'd still be good to tie the two of them together. We also want to use these calls to talk about participation opportunities, and I think we've done a little bit of that today. We can talk about some of the other groups that are working together, whether it's the documentation interest group. Is there anybody on here from the documentation interest group to let us know when they're meeting next? If not, I'll find out from Joe and we'll put it on our.
I don't think the next meeting has been determined yet.
Okay, great. But that's the kind of thing. If there are other structured groups that are meeting that we can be involved in on the periphery to advocate for catalogers in the room, we can do that. Any kind of opportunities that both Galen and Andrea outlined there about ways that we can just go in and classify some of the bugs or just test some of the bugs, even if it's not, oh gosh, what does Taryn call it? What is the bug fix week? Squashing bugs?
Bug squashing.
Squashing, yes. So we'll make sure that we update this group too and encourage more people to get involved with bug squashing. It's a lot of fun. And then we always want to allow time for question and answers as we go through. So, and what we want to do, and I've got that listed under next steps, is as we're putting together these agendas each month, we want to make sure that we get input from the community if there's specific things that you want us to cover, that we can prepare in advance for that too. So that would come along with the general Q&A when we talk about can we investigate more specific subjects, maybe look at some other topics that we didn't cover. This would be the time to offer up those suggestions. On the wiki, you'll be able to see the notes from our last meeting, and the last meeting was just the organizing committee, so nobody has missed a meeting. There was just one that we came together to talk about how we can make this work. But during that time, we talked about some of the things that we feel like are out there in the community that we want to gather together and put on our wiki, and these are just some of the ideas that we came up with, and that we will be improving it as the months go on, especially as many of us get through supporting a summer reading program here moving into the fall. And these are some of the things we want to do, especially talking about welcoming and introductions to the community. We're not talking just the Evergreen community, but we're talking about the Evergreen cataloging community and how we can help one another and connect with one another there. So we've kind of looked at some of the ways we can do that for people that are brand new or people that are new in positions and systems where they haven't had to do cataloging before, and we see a lot more of that, at least in public libraries, that we're trying to train, but it's hard to do that when so many of us are isolated or at the very least insulated in our jobs. So knowing there's a community out there and how we can connect and making the wiki the home place for that. So we'll start coming to a lot of different, sending out emails to just try to get more information about all the different systems that are out there and people that are willing to put contact information out on the wiki too for people to come to them about different features you may use that others may not, that you'd be willing to talk about, and what versions you're on, so that as we prepare to do our own upgrades, we can do that. I know that we've been doing some stockpiling, is not the right word, but gathering of cataloging documentation from different systems in addition to what the DIG group is doing. And the DIG group's doing some really phenomenal stuff reorganizing their documentation, if you haven't checked that out lately. We talked about doing the Launchpad how-to. We'll make sure that the very good session from last year's conference, that we pull that out and make sure that's available to everybody. All kinds of training tools, anything that you have that you think would benefit not just somebody cataloging in Evergreen, but just new catalogers. We find that there are just a disparate number of tools that are out there, but we know which ones we have to use and which ones we have to adapt, because how do we use RDA is not the same answer with, are we using RDA in Koha, or are we using RDA in Evergreen? So it's more taking what you know from standards and how you make them work in Evergreen. So we really are kind of a hybrid in so many ways as catalogers. So. And then other old projects that we might want to get back to. So not necessarily high priority bugs, but things we've talked about in the past, and that we felt like at a community at some point we wanted to review things that are kind of the low-hanging fruit. One of those has been around for about a year now. Is the last one listed here under gathering information to share, and that's what kind of MARC record templates we want included out of the box, so to speak, in Evergreen. And there's an old bug out there, and there's a link to that now, to start that conversation about what else do we need. I know we're looking at that internally in our consortium now to get our record templates, what we would need to really be able to get all the different formats. We have 3 or 4 new formats just in the last 3 or 4 years. And that needs to come from the cataloging community. We have to say this is what would benefit us instead of just waiting for it to happen without us. Okay, we've moved on pretty quickly. We have about 20 minutes left if we want to use it. Again, this is really supposed to be an introduction to the working group and how these meetings are going to go. I will pause here again if anybody from the organizing committee wants to add anything else, or if anybody that's just joining us for the first time has questions or suggestions. I would certainly welcome those now. Okay. Well, my next question, I guess, really is for this group in general. Does monthly sound like something that would be beneficial? And if you can't, if your audio is not working, if your microphone's not working, if you can communicate through the chat. Do you think monthly is something that would be beneficial to the committee, to repeat my first statement? And is it something that it seems like this will be good, that you would want to share? I'm going to just take a moment and read your chat here. Thanks, Beth. Yeah. And I was just going to suggest, because it's usually best for us to have a standard time so that we can block out the hour well in advance. We did second Tuesdays at 2 o'clock Eastern. Is this time conflicting with anybody? Did you have trouble making this work? I know it's short notice this month for the introduction, but I think we can do this and then see if second Tuesdays at 2 o'clock seems to be a pretty well-received day. We might just leave it there. And if anybody has any other responses to that. Thank you, Beth.
I think meeting monthly is kind of crucial, and this time.
Was that Kate?
It was. If you barely hear me again, I'm sorry. I've tried everything.
That's okay. I can hear you, though.
It sounds like it's looking like the second Tuesdays. Everybody's in favor of second Tuesdays at the 2 p.m. Eastern. Sounding good.
Let's give that a shot then. And so next month, should we try something more themed, more just a presentation with a Q&A, or do we want to do a full informational meeting next month?
Well, I'm wondering if we can spend some time putting our heads together about figuring out which MARC record templates we want to be in kind of the stock Evergreen, because I got pretty excited about that when you were talking, Jennifer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is pretty exciting. Would you want to do that next month, or do you want to do it for 15 minutes now? Or both?
Maybe we could start it now, but I'm sure a lot of people might want to dig through their old documentation and figure out which ones they're using in their own systems and so forth.
Well,
I know I'm not totally prepared.
Nor am I. I was just going to hand it all to you, Jen. No, I think that's a great idea, and I think it's something that, yeah, we could announce it far in advance to say this is what we're going to be looking at, and use it as an exercise of this is how we can work together to update some of the stuff that has been around for a while, and not get lost on, some of the, what did Galen say, the bid frame level changes. We can do that as our...
Yeah, because I would be happy to write bib frame support if only I knew exactly what that meant.
Yeah, welcome to the club.
I used to say that I would get very nervous thinking about it. I'm like, okay, it's been so long now. It's kind of like the monster in the closet. He just becomes a friend at some point. Just the idea that he's lurking, I don't know what that means. Okay, let's do record templates next month then. And we can do a quick update because we would have time for both, and then spend at least half of the meeting looking at that with some advanced preparation. That's exciting. Okay. And if people have additional suggestions, any other conference workshops we might want to revisit, I will go through last year's conference. I know all the presentations. We'll pull out anything that's looking to get it on our wiki, just make sure they're there. So that means our next meeting will be August 14th at 2 o'clock Eastern. It may be on the same platform, but we may test out another one just to see how it works. So I will send out a quick evaluation probably tomorrow to anybody that attended this meeting, along with the link to it, and to anybody that missed it. If we can make a note for me to remember to send out the evaluation, I would appreciate that. And just see how this platform worked for you until we settle into something a little more regularly. Is there anything else down here? Our next meeting, theme meetings, and we'll figure out a way. I'm going to rely on people that know more about working with the wiki than I do. Is there a way to capture items? Is there like a blog type for people?
Somebody's running a machine that's pretty audible, sounds like.
Okay, it's gone.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll make some updates to the wiki, and we talked about at one point how to do. Galen, was that you that we talked about if there's a way to send that people can get updates to the wiki?
Yeah, and it's something that's still on my plate to look at.
We haven't updated already, but I think just by next month maybe we'll be able to announce that we'll be able to do that then. Okay. Well, I know we've got some sort of audible issue there, a machine in the background, but I think that's it for our formal meeting at this point. If anybody has any more questions, suggestions, at this time we'll entertain them. If not, we will adjourn. Thank you all so very much for joining us. I'm excited about getting the group together regularly. I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thanks for handling it.
Yes, thanks, Jennifer.
Yes, thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jennifer.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it was great.